And maybe Judy L, can you mute yourself? And Gunnar.
Yeah. Thank you, Judy L. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. And thank you, Janine, for helping them.
Sure.
I appreciate that. And shame on the rest of you for not. I'm teasing, of course. All right. So basically, all right. So good evening or good morning, everybody. My name is Mark, and we're going to talk about the trinistic model of reality. And what the trinistic model of reality is, it's based on looking at reality, looking at what we're seeing, the world that appears to us, and seeing three things in one. The three things in one that you're seeing when you're looking at the world, of appearances, the trinistic model shows you how what you're actually looking at is the supreme source, is the ground. But it appears three dynamics are happening simultaneously. I describe it in my book as what it is, what it does, and what it emerges as. And we're seeing all three of these things simultaneously. But we're only seeing the as part. We're not seeing the is and the does. We're only seeing the as. So if we liken this to the common description of the ocean, if enlightenment or the Brahman or God or non-duality was just the ocean itself gets obscured once the movement turns that ocean into the waves. So now all you see have is waves, and the ocean itself is unseen because of the waves. It's still there, all it is ocean, but it's obscured because of its own movement. So the inseparability between the movement and the water spontaneously manifests of waves, and that's all you see is waves. That's all there is waves. So the trinistic model is to show you that in the waves that we're looking at, it is just the water and it is just the movement, and we're seeing all three things at once. So, all right, so where do we go from there? Yeah, and there's three different ways that we're always going to return to that when we're talking about the triune. And everyone will have one that they think is most important. Like I said, for me, what I chose for me is the most important, was just that I noticed that what they all have in common is that they all represent what it is, which is just awareness, what it does, which is to be aware, which is to imagine, and then the as, it imagines itself as the world. So all three of these things are imagination. What you're looking at is the world. In Dzogchen, they're going to describe it in terms of the essence. And like I said, the essence is just pure space, just capacity. We haven't even, by the way, in their analogy of essence, nature, and energy, we don't even get to talk about the world until we get to energy. Like everything that we could talk about today in the Dzogchen model, it only happens once you get to the level of energy. At this level of essence and nature, there's nothing even to speak about. It's just the inseparability of clarity and emptiness. That's the unspeakable. That is the don't know mind. That's the untouchable. But the inseparability of essence being the space and its nature being clarity, and by clarity just means lucid, that lucid quality. And like I said, it's not, you can't say awareness yet at this point. It's just potential, the potential of the essence of space and the potential essence the nature of just, they refer to as clarity. But you could go a step further and describe it as lucidity, but not even awareness yet, because that doesn't happen until the inseparability of essence in the nature, which is clarity, spontaneously manifests as energy. And then bam, now we're talking about the world. Now we could talk about anything. Anything could now be spoken about. And the most general way to look at these, the way I look at the world, in the way in Dzogchen you're going to hear it the most, is simply as everything has a base, a path, and a fruit. And you're looking at all three simultaneously. So that's probably the most general way to look at the triune, that every single thing has a base, and from that base spontaneously flows its path, and the path has no choice but to spontaneously flow from that base, no matter what we're talking about. Like I'm always talking about insights. So your experience of non-duality, of what we're talking about, from the base of that is spontaneously going to flow your path. Your actions are going to be dictated from your base, and your base in this circumstance, base, path, and fruit are so general. We could talk about anything. We could be talking about the universe. We could be talking about enlightenment. We could be talking about the flowers. We could be talking about conversations. Everything in the universe is going to have a base, path, and a fruit. And in science, we would see that as a waveform. you know, the base, and then its path, and then its fruit. All right. So everything has a base. Oh, and from the base spontaneously flows its path. That's its actions that flow spontaneously from whatever the base is. And then from that path, spontaneously going to result in the fruit based on the inseparability of the base and the path is spontaneously going to manifest as the fruit. So that's the most general way to look at what the triad is. Now, the way I look at it in the book, the way we're going to get into it, what my book is about, my book really is about, it started about just, I guess in the most general way of creation. Like how the fuck did this get here? What is this? And what explains it? And like I said, it's not really creation because it's outside of time. We use the word creation because we're used to speaking of in time, but in reality, it's being created now. It wasn't created. We're watching creation. It's happening. And I don't want to stray too far away, but I will just mention the way I explained that it's both happening simultaneously. In other words, it's all happened and it's happening in time. The way I will draw that analogy is to a black hole. What we now know about a black hole is that they exist in 3 dimensions at once. There's a singularity, and then there's the flat sheet of the 2-dimensional sheet, and then it appears as a 3-dimensional hologram. So all 3 of those things are happening at the same time, and that's the same way we could look at awareness. So what I'm going to be describing in the book, a lot of this is to basically, it comes down to, like I said, account for our reality, account for the appearances that are coming before you. Because basically you have all the non-dualists that are telling you nothing exists. Nothing exists, nothing's happening, but yet you have the world to account for. You have the appearances to account for. The world still does appear. So that's what drove me to this. So what you're going to see in the book, it's going to be talking about specifically that what the is, what the essence is, what the base is. I describe it as potential. What's really there, and that's why I said you can't even talk about it yet, because it's not even, there's nothing there yet in the sense of anything to be spoken about. All there is potential, and that's the unborn. So the potential is the unborn. That's what everybody's talking about. They're talking about the unknown, the don't know mind, the before thinking. That's just potential. When everyone's trying to point you back to emptiness or nothingness, they're trying to point you back to a field of potentiality. But it's not just a simple nothingness because it is raging with that potential. So it's not just a simple nothingness, it's potential, but pure potential, because it is nothing at this point. But the nature of that potential is processing. So you take that potential, and I use the word processing because it's the most general word I could think of to whatever is going to act upon that potential. Any action, any of these things, action. So now we go down, that'll be in the next one. But basically processes is anything that acts upon. So let's say going back to the waves analogy, there's the water, which is the potential. And then the processing is the movement of the waves, the natural movement of the waves that results in the emergence. And I got sloppy handwriting, but that's emergence of the waves. And that's all we see. And that's my point. That's why this is relevant, because everybody's telling you that nothing exists, and yet the world emerges for you. And the trinistic model is to demonstrate how, yes, it is true that nothing exists, and yet these appearances still appear. And by the way, they'll never not appear. That's the way this trinistic thing shows you. It has no choice but to appear. That's why it's appearing. The only reason it's appearing now is because it had no choice to appear. No one made it appear. There was never a decision for anything to appear. The very nature of it is to appear. So anyway, so then we get to the last one, which is the ground, the action, and the result. Once again, you could liken that to the wave or the rainbow. That's my favorite one. We'll get to the rainbow in a minute. I always come back to the rainbow, but we'll do that since we already used water a couple of times. We'll tag that. So the ground would be the light. The action would be the, what action of the light? The bending of the light. That's the only thing light does, it bend because of the raindrops. And the result is to take the ground and make it appear as a rainbow. But the rainbow is never not the white light. Never, it's just bending, it just appears because of the action, because of the process, because of the path, because of its nature, because of what it does. The white light has no a choice but to appear as the rainbow. So The next thing I want to do is get to the where, but already I feel like we've talked for a long time. I can't see the time, 16 minutes. And I made it a rule to myself to not talk longer than 15 minutes without opening up to questions. But don't fake questions. If you really don't have any questions, don't make one up. So what I'm going to do is now, if you have any questions about anything I talked about, ask them now. But if you have questions about something else, we'll get into that later. So anything I covered now, real quick, does anybody got any questions? Awesome. Thank you. Cool. All right, then. So now we're going to go to the where. So we talked about the why for me, and then the what it is. Now we're going to talk about the where. So where is the triune? So to illustrate how what we take the world to actually be is a triune or continuum of three simultaneous dimensions. All right. So basically the where. So the where I'm saying is the where's right here. The where's all you see. This is the trikaya. This is the triune. All you've ever seen is the triune. That is the world. So that's the where. And so that's when we're going to come to the rainbow. Now we're going to get to the rainbow part. And you know what? I feel like I may have skipped something. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take a real quick peek. I did definitely skip something, but I'm just going to take a quick peek to see if it's even necessary. Man. You know what? Since we haven't started the where, I am going to read this because it's not really out of order because, all right. So what I was going to do at the very beginning, this is great. Don't you love it? All right. I just want to describe how I got to this book. So I want to just take you on a little adventure, I guess, to bridge, like I said, what this has to do with our lives. So I wrote 3 books, and I have just a paragraph about each book and show you the segue of why this is important, of why the triunistic model is applicable to our lives, is applicable to our experiences, to our daily experience, and to truth, reality, seeing things as they are. That's the main thing, seeing things correctly as they are, not living in illusion. If the world's not illusion for me, I see it correctly as it is. There is no illusion. It's like a rainbow. If you think a rainbow is a rainbow and you don't know what it actually is, you're living an illusion. If you recognize what it is, it's you know exactly what it is. You know it's light, you know it's bending, and you know its appearances. It's not tricking you. All right, so let me just back up and talk about the trilogy and the evolution of the books leading up to this book. So the emphasis of book 1 was that this is it. And when I say this is it, we're talking about this, what we're looking at, the experience that we're having right now, your laptop, the room, everything, that this is it. This is the supreme source. This is the thing that you're looking for. Meaning that the entire world that you see and experience is actually the very supreme source that you seek. However, it, as well as the world that appears, is actually just misunderstood or misperceived as being otherness or being outside of you. The operative word in the first book is this. Since I knew I wanted to draw your attention to the it being this experience right here and now, which is just your mind, by the way. When they're saying that this, just your mind, it's all your experiences, imagination. And we know that. Science tells us that. Everyone tells us that. All there is our imagination. And then we extrapolate from that and say, well, we assume there's a real world creating this imagination. And that's a whole other separate thing. But even a scientist will admit that what you're seeing, that what you're looking at is just your imagination. It's a field of awareness, supposedly interpreted from a whole other world, but we won't go there. All right. The emphasis on the second book was that it is and it isn't. And obviously the it that we're talking about is God, awareness, supreme source, whatever word you want to use. All right. And what I mean by that, actually, I'll probably say it, so I'll just read it. Meaning that the very nature of it is paradoxical in nature. Exactly. Thank you. All right. Meaning that the very nature of it is paradoxical in nature, at least from a dualistic perspective. There is nothing you could equivocally say about it that is not a contradiction on its face. Every truth that could be uttered about it is at once true and false depending upon your perspective. The operative word here is and. It is and it isn't simultaneously. That's the emphasis of the second book. All right, so I want to spend just another sentence on that since that's evolved for me. So my big epiphany was everything is and it isn't. Anything that you could speak of, any truth that you could utter. Do we have choice? Is the world illusion? Is there a self? Every answer is always going to have to be it is and it isn't. And that's because the deeper you probe into it, the more you look into the is, you see the isn't. Then when you look into the isn't, you see it appears as it is. So later, I've gotten to Nagarjuna's 4 negations that I realize are just a deeper dive into what my epiphany was, everything is and it isn't. And he goes further than that, saying it's not that it is and it isn't, it's also, it's not both is and it isn't, and it's not either and it is and it isn't. And it's basically all these things are just supposed to land you in a place of unknowing, of indeterminacy, of potential. Could be, but it's not necessarily. A quantum flux. Behind me, I got a thing I've been obsessed with lately of just these boxes of space. Anything could appear in that space. This is just as base. You know, when we're all little, we all drew the boxes with just space. That's just a space. Anything could appear in that space. Oh, and if you see what I did was I put a head on there and feet to show you what it's looked like. This is just a self-knowing world. That's you looking at the world. Everything that appears in there are just the forms and shapes of a world, and it's you just looking into yourself. But all there is just that space and then the appearances that happen in that space, which we'll go into later. We'll go into that later. But basically, so that idea, this don't know mind or Nagarjuna's 4 refutations or beginner's mind, they're just to land you back here, just to empty space. That's all they're pointing you back to. That's all right this is. Everything you're looking at is just empty space, but it's filled. It's just like a movie screen. It's a movie screen, but filled with the colors and shapes that are me talking to you. And the sounds and shapes and the feelings you're having, the feelings of sitting on your feet, the thoughts that maybe you're having about this, you like it or you don't like it. All that's just stuff on the screen, all of it. If it could be detected, if it could be seen, if it could be observed, if it could be anything, it's form, it's a subtle form. Even the sense of I am, even the sense of being, if you could sense it, it's a subtle form. And what you are is you're the encompassment of that. If you could see that, I mean, that's your experience. You see it, you're the one seeing that. All right, so, but anyway, the important thing is where that should land you. It's where it is and it isn't, or Nagarjuna's even 4 deeper negations, is that feeling of just being there, just nothing. You got nothing. It's not this or it's not that. You have nothing to cling to. It's not this or it's not that. It's beyond any of that. All right. So that was the second book. So the second book was emphasizing that. In the third book, in the final book of the trilogy, it emphasizes what it is, which is space, what it does, which is to be aware, and what it appears as, which is this world. Boom, right back up there. Boom, you're just looking at yourself. Meaning that the singularity aspect of the aware space, or God, expresses itself as a seamless triune of potential, processing, and the emergence of that potential. The operative words here are the triunistic relationship between is, does, and as. I see this triune as a self-perpetuating continuum, and the goal of this book is to share the specific insight. So I want to go back now, because as I'm saying that, the best visualization I can see for that is the rainbow. That's all. That's why in Dzogchen it's such a popular image, is just that rainbow. It shows you how everyone's going to tell you that God is man, God is individual there too, but they're just telling you. They don't really show you, and that's what the symbol of the rainbow is. So I want to go to that, just not anything, just to you. I don't have anything written down about that. So the best way I can explain it is the reason we all know what rainbows are is because we have a context for rainbows. In other words, we see a spacious sky, and within that spacious sky, we see an appearance of a rainbow. But if it were to be different, if our faces were to be smushed up against that rainbow, we would have no context. And we would think that this is it. This is just all there is rainbow. But because we have that context, and we're like, oh, now I understand what appears as an illusion is actually just the white light, but because of the bending, because the rainbow only appears where the raindrops are. And we know that the raindrops refract light, which is a bending. So we know that what appears as a rainbow is actually a white light in bending. We don't see the white light anymore, but we know that's what it is. We're not fooled. We're not tricked. We don't think that the rainbow is just orange, red, green. That's an appearance of white. That's how white is emerging. White is emerging as red, pink, and all the different things on the spectrum, but it's not anything but a white light. It's the inseparability of the light and the bending, the light and the activity. So what you're looking at, to bring us back down to awareness, is awareness aware of itself. And the result is this. It's all the colors and shapes and all the activity, the feeling of self and other, the feeling of two, everything. And we'll get into that later of why it's so complex and why it just mirrors infinitely and why you can never get out of the maze. That's, later we'll get into that. But that's what I want to do. I want to build this from the ground up. And that's why I want to take questions every 15 minutes. I want to build this from the ground up so everyone sees this and they experience this for themselves. So it's not something that I'm telling you. It's not something that's coming from a book. It's coming from a natural insight that you're seeing yourself and you're recognizing, and your insight is just getting more deeper and deeper into the same insight. Because as anybody knows, there's no different insight to what we're just talking about. This is it. I have nothing new to say than this is it. I didn't invent this is it. It's every non-dual place will come down to this is it. But what I've found is to show that the how this is it. So now we'll move on. So, by the way, I want to continue with that rainbow thing because I did have a thought about that. The reason I talked about the rainbow thing was now we could bring it back to our lives, how we could apply this to our lives. So now I want to take out my picture, my famous picture, my favorite picture of the basic dynamic, the original dynamic. It's so fun. All right. This one. All right. So this is basically the basic dynamic of everything, and everything just models after that. I'm going back to the rainbow. So to take this back to the rainbow, here you go. Yes, that's what I wanted to do. Because everybody's familiar with this. Now, if you take this and you put this to the rainbow side by side, can I do this in the picture? Yeah, let me do this. Okay, so everyone's also familiar with the prism of light. We have light, and then we have the bending, and then we have the result, which is the color spectrum. But if you put those here, if you put this sideways now on its back to show the light coming from the bottom, and then there's the bending and there's the rainbow, that is identical to what I was saying with my, what I'm trying to do this is I'm trying to show you how we're experiencing the triune right now. We're experiencing the triune right now. What's behind you is the unmanifest. I mean, you tell me if anything's manifesting behind you. Nothing. There's nothing behind you. And you're the bending, you're the action, you're the self, you're the thing. And then what appears is the world. You're the thing that's creating the world. You're the eyes that are creating the world. Without you, there is no world. So there's the inseparability of the inactive void, which is just space, and the clarity, which is the active part. And that's the middle part. That's you, the active part. And then the result, boom, there you go. That's the world, just like that. But anyway, and I know I wanted to show you this. Yes, to get back to our practical experiences. So just like the only reason we could see the rainbows because we could see the backdrop of the sky. The same thing is we don't see this. We don't recognize this because we're so concentrated on this. So we don't ever see this. Now let me drop this out of the screen. All we see is this. So therefore, we're not going to see this inside of this. Because that's what they're trying to tell you with the whole emptiness is form, form is emptiness, form, blah, blah, blah. The Heart Sutra, it's there. It's there. And I'm going to skip ahead in my talk, but just to get to this because I think it's relevant. But that's what I was trying to show you with the leaf. With the leaf pick, it's there. It's one leaf, but when you bend it, it appears as differentiated, but it's one goddamn thing. The leaf is the same thing as this. The void you're looking at too. And for now I have to flip it upside down. Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter what you want to do, but you get it. It's the same leaf, but when you bend it, it appears that you're looking at something else other. It's still the void. What you're looking at in front of you is the void. You're staring into the void right now. That's all there is the void. Nothing's ever happened. Nothing's ever existed. But the bending made the void appear like this. And we see it in nature. That's what I'm saying when I was out in nature and on the forest. This is what nature is teaching me. Is we see it all the time. These are examples of how we see it. Nature could do this. If nature does this, nature does that. Nature does that. The whole fucking, prism thing, that's all it does. But anyway, I still didn't get to my point. And Sandra, I see you. You're going to get first question. Thank you. But I just want to finish this point. The whole reason I'm saying is what we have to do. The only reason I'm talking is because this is it, guys. If anyone's talking to me about calories, this is enlightenment is just as easy as calories. This is it. This is the calorie counting. You cultivate this and you're going to see that in there. Just like with the rainbow. We don't see the rainbow because we don't see the backdrop. And the minute you see the backdrop, boom, oh, and now I get what the rainbow is. Same thing with this. The more you cultivate that, you're going to put that into perspective. Yeah, it's like a drive-in movie theater. You have to back up so you can see, oh, I get it. It's a screen. The world's still going to happen. Politics are still going to be there. COVID's still going to be there. Screaming bosses are still going to be there. But it's different when it's just on a movie. You don't have the attachment. You don't have the fixation. You don't have the sense of it being real. Like I'm always talking about the stick man thing. It doesn't seem real. It's just happening. It's like, oh, well, whatever. All right, Sandra, you're on. Thank you. Give me a chance to drink some water.
Well,
by the way, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sandra.
Well, I was going to say that the bending is what most people take themselves as, but the bending also has a lot to do with the words and the thoughts and the concepts. Those are creating the bending, or what you're seeing after the bend, or what the bending is creating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you see what you think you'll see. It starts by what you expect to see. You have an idea of what you'll see, but you're really accessing a memory, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, now that you say that, you remind me of the bending to the words. It forms like a groove, I guess, is what I'm hearing, like a path, a trail, a well-worn groove.
Well, if it's only one mind too, it's like you're not just accessing your bending. I mean, all beings bending, whatever has been seen before is appearing. You're accessing one mind of what has been imagined before you even got here. So not that it actually is, being created, or that it's actually there.
Yes. But exactly. But that's the thing, is that's all that's capable of is appearances. It's not like this world's an illusion and then there's a different world where there's a different place where there's a real world. No, all illusions is all we got. All the imagination is capable of is producing illusions. So really the sense of illusion loses all sense of meaning, because what's not illusion? The only thing that's not illusion is that.
It's only our idea too that, the duality of good and evil, or that is so upsetting, too, as well. That when we see something, we automatically judge it as being favorable or unfavorable. And that's really most people's problem.
Which is why all the Zen guys say, don't judge. That's the whole point of Zen, is not to judge, not to think about it.
Yeah.
Let it arise and be what it is, as it is.
Yeah, exactly. To not modify it. That's the way to not try to modify it. Don't try to even control, don't try to steer it. Exactly. Because then what you're doing is you're coming out of yourself. Anyone that's talked to me recently, I got this whole analogy of, we're down here and then the arising's happening in front of us, and all we could do, because all there is awareness. So you can't control the arisings. And by the way, the arisings, it could be people, it could be thoughts, it could be feelings, it could be philosophy, it could be contemplation. Anything is just an arising. And the only thing that we could do, you don't have any choice over your arisings, but you do whether you take your attention and you keep it down here focused on what is, or you lend your attention to the arising. Now you come out and you rise to the arising, and now you're inflating that thought or that meme or that idea with your awareness. Now it's getting animated into what I describe as the stick man. And the solution is always just to drop it. Once you get that taste or that distaste for recognizing, like what Sandra said, I'm up here in illusion, the distaste should always be like, drop it right back down to not thinking. And that's what I was just like telling my wife today. The reason you do that is not because a book told you or because you think you're supposed to, because that's where the reward is. That's where the prize is. The prize is the dropping of your mind and coming back into relaxing into whatever is. That's the prize. The prize itself is relaxing into whatever it is. And the more you do that, the more you see that. Like I'm saying, the more you cultivate this, the more you're going to see it as a prize. The more you're going to see that as that's your refuge. It's your only refuge, because this has nothing to offer you. This is nothing but pain and suffering out here. There's nothing to offer you. You're going to get bit. Every distinguishment that you, that's what I was going to say about what Sandra Ann was talking about. You can go deeper to make any distinguishments, to distinguish between the samsara and nirvana, to distinguish. I think I was listening to a beautiful talk today where it was Nisargadatta Maharaj, where he was like, most people are seeking happiness. You know, wouldn't you want to go to a field where you're beyond happiness or good or bad, where you don't have any preference for any of that? That's what they're always talking about. And people just seem to hear what they want to hear and thinking it's going to be something specific, whatever your specific thing that means to you, but it's not. It's just going to be like I've told several people recently, like instead it's like you're being wired from within. So you're indifferent to whatever things befall you, whatever things, happiness, sadness, getting what you want or whatever. You have no attachment to any of those conditions being right. But anyway, I want to get back on track. Sorry about that. I feel like I got off base. But anyway, oh yes, no, yeah, I did that on purpose. That's right. I just wanted to set that up for how the evolution got to this book, how it all ties in together. So, and I did see a note here too, that one thing I do want to describe too, is it's not just a triune, it's not just a set of three things. That's another note that I really want to go into before we go more. A lot of people think a triune is just a set of any three things. If you notice when you look at these, it's not just a set of three things. There's always a base, there's always a path, there's always a fruit. So there's always like an essence, always just something of what it is, like an essence. And then this one is always some kind of activity, whether it's does, or its nature, or its path, or its processing, or its action. And then the third one is always its result, a fruit, or a manifestation, an emergence, and as. And the reason I like the word as is because I'm just trying to show you through language, like Sandra Ann was just pointing out with language, as shows you that it's no difference than is. There's no three things. There's just is the as is the same thing as the is, just like the rainbow is, just like the white light, it's just appearing as a rainbow. And just like your awareness appearing as Sandra or Debbie or Janine.
The phrase you used in the book, Mark, that blew my mind was relationship.
That's what I was going to get to. Thank you. I probably
okay. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No. I said I probably wouldn't. Actually, I did write it down. Thank you. But I probably would have skipped it though. So thank you for bringing me that. He's right. What I had written down was it's not just the three attributes, but the specific relationship between the base, path, and the fruit. So thank you, Rod. I may have skipped that part. It's the specific relationship between these two. And what that is you're always going to have the inseparability of these two emerging of that. Just like the inseparability of the white light and the bending emerging as a rainbow, the inseparability of awareness, become aware of itself emerging as the world, the same thing. And we could look at this on a molecular level. We could look at this with plants. We could look at this with language. We could look at this with everything in life. Everything is going to have a base, a path, and the fruit. Everything. It has no choice. And we'll get to that later on. But another point that I had, since Rod was nice enough to point that out that I missed, I'll say a couple other things too. So yeah, the inseparability of two results in the third. And also, it's always the middle component. It's always the middle component is the one that converts that one into that one. So you're always going to have being light turning into rainbow, or awareness turning into consciousness. See, that's what we have. Last week, we got into a whole discussion about the of and awareness, different consciousness. what we're talking about is the evolution of awareness to consciousness. All we're experiencing is consciousness, which is awareness of awareness. So the difference between awareness, the way I differentiate awareness and consciousness, is awareness is just awareness undifferentiated. But the minute awareness becomes aware of anything, and we know there's nothing to be aware of but itself. So once awareness becomes aware of awareness as something else, as another, as an appearance of something else, that's when what we call consciousness. That's when consciousness is born. Consciousness is born when the bend happens and awareness takes itself to be a self and another. That's the birth. That is at the point we could start talking about anything. Anything up to that point is unspeakable, unknowable, and it's just concepts. It's stuff you have to pull from symbols to try to communicate, try to communicate the unspeakable. All right, so now we could slide back into where we deviated to was from the where. So I think I already did that page. Yeah, I think I already did that one. So we already talked about the rainbow and seeing the world as a trichaya. So that's really what this is it's seeing the world as a trichaya. What you're seeing the space and the awareness in the world that you're looking at in there. And the way you do that is you have to cultivate this. You have to draw your attention back to here. And the more attention you draw your attention back here, the more you're going to see the void in that, just like with the leaf. Now picture that leaf. Just imagine this is one leaf, but this is the real part of the leaf, the unfettered part. And then this is the bent part, the reflective, the illusory part of the leaf. It is still part of the leaf, but if you want to recognize that to be that, you have to concentrate, draw your attention down here. You have to draw all your attention down here instead of allowing your attention to drift up there and animating that world. You have to take your attention. I tell my wife, your attention is like a fire hose. Like your whole life, you're walking around with the goddamn fire hose and you're aiming and it's fun. So where are you going to point your energy? Are you going to take your energy and point it out to the world and inflate the world, make it look real and make it look animated? Because that's what you're doing. You're the giver of life. You are the awareness that's animating your thoughts, that's animating your feelings, that's animating any imagination that happens in your world. You're animating it. And you don't have to. That's what I'm talking about, the dropping. Once you drop, now you're animating this, right where it should be, awareness on awareness. And then when you do that, and the more you recognize that, then you're going to recognize that in here, because I'm telling you, it's there. Just like the leaf. You saw how it's possible in the leaf. That's why I use the leaf to show you how it's possible. Nature has demonstrated its possibility for the one to appear as two. Nature has demonstrated this. So we could see this for ourselves to know where it's possible. And the way you get to do it, if by looking at the leaf, is you get to know the real part. So we direct our attention down here towards silence and stillness and whatever your thing is, that's whatever your ticket is to silence or stillness, the unmoving, the undifferentiated, that's it. And the more you cultivate that, the more you're going to recognize that in the moving, just like you're going to recognize the leaf, just like you're going to recognize the rainbow to be the white light.
Hey, Mark,
yes,
can
sir.
I just make a comment?
Please.
One of the things that when I said the relationship aspect blew my mind reading the book, I think one of the things you're talking about constantly is relationship.
Yes.
It's, the one is having a relationship with itself, right? And that's what appearance is. And so the reason I brought up that thing is I think it's a real salient, important point to think of it all in terms of relating.
Yes.
Like trying to relate to the void, trying to relate to the world. When you said relationship, my mind just went, oh my God, like that's it. The one is having a relationship with itself, which manifests appearance, do you know what I'm saying? I'm not doing a very good job of explaining.
No. You're getting to something a lot deeper that comes into the end of the book that I found also. And by the way, once I start speaking about this, please interrupt, because anybody here that has anything to do with science is going to know more than me. So I know I'm going to say it wrong. But when I compared what I'm talking about to science, what I found out was like space moves time and time guides space. Like there's a relationship between time and space that mirrors exactly what we're talking about. One moves one and one shapes one. And it's the exact dynamic. But it's the relationship you're talking about. The relationship is everything. And in science, it knows that too. Like I said, there's something deep, and we're going to get to it. And maybe that's when what you're talking about will come out. But I want to build. You're deep, and you already know this.
I just think I think it's a great perspective to keep in the back of your mind, and everything you're talking about is relationship. Like that's one of the things that just kind of freaked me out when I read the third book. So
no, I appreciate that. And actually, and another reason I appreciate that is because if you remember, I started off, I want to show you the relationship between this and how it relates to your life, that there is a relationship between these concepts in your life. So thank you, Rod. And I think he's got a good point. I think everything that I'm saying is based on relationship, the relationship between these things. And yeah, actually, you know what? That's deep. Thank you, Rod. I just dawned on me. What we're looking at is a relationship. Now, the reason I wasn't looking at it as a relationship is I happen to fall back on the word dynamic. And I've used this before. And actually, in a conversation I had with Rod, where I was talking about at some point, all we see is dynamics. And like the example I gave to Rod is like me. I appear to be one of the multitude. But really, even as a one of the multitude, as what appears to be one, what I truly am is a dynamic. Or as Rod's saying, what I truly am is a relationship. I'm a relationship between my brain and my heart and my lungs and my thing. So that's what he's talking about. In my word, I fall back on dynamic, but I like relationship. So yeah, do pay attention.
Well, relationship is a process.
There you go.
It is a process. It's not just a noun. It's
It's the action. It's the second part. All right. Thank you. We got two hands up. Thank you, Rod. I appreciate that. Two hands, William, and then Judy. William, what's up?
Can you hear me, Mark?
I can hear you, buddy. What's up?
Okay. Just, from listening to you speak, the question I have is, my interpretation of what you've said is that the source is just void, and then it is that energy is reflected or bent or deflected to create the world that we experience. And my question is, what determines what world we experience? Why don't we all experience the same world?
Bingo. And my wife asked that yesterday, and I don't have anything to write on, but I'll write it. I'll drew this and put it up here. This is the way I explain it to my wife. What specifically creates your world is the actions that you're doing right now. Each wave creates the next wave. So each wave has a path in the fruit, and the fruit of that wave is going to create the next wave. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. So each wave is a path.
Can I just ask for a little bit of clarification there?
Please.
You say wave. My belief on what's actually occurring, and you say wave, I say thought.
What word?
It's actually the thoughts.
Oh, thought. Yes.
When you say each wave creates an action which determines the manifestation of the world that an individual experiences, I'm just curious as to whether you could substitute the word wave with thought.
Actually, thoughts is a more accurate word.
Okay, so if thought creates our future manifestations, and we as a self or an I am does not exist, but is an illusion, who is doing the thinking that's creating the manifestation that we perceive as our world?
Thank you, William. And I hope I have a brilliant way of answering your question. Okay, I hope I do. All right. So my pen is the, can you do me a favor and ask your question again? Ask your question again.
My question is that if the self is an illusion and the self's thought creates future manifestations, where does the illusionary self fit into the whole scheme of things in relation to the actual manifested experience that an individual experiences if he doesn't exist, which is the ultimate paradox?
Thank you. I'm going to answer a question. I'm going to answer a very deep question, and I hope it's helpful for you. All right. This is the paradox, and this is an example of the triune. This is an example of how the one appears as many. So the one is the pen drawing the waves. The illusion is, so, oh no, the line. Okay, so the line itself is the real thing. And then the line itself shapes itself as a person with an individual identity. And then the line shapes itself as another. So there's one line, and that's the truth. That's what does not change the line, but what appears as the action of the line and the maneuvers and the result of the line is the appearance of a person, an illusory self, but it's not real. What's real is the line. What's real is the line. And the way I did it before was by this thing. In my epiphany, this is what I saw. What I saw was awareness is just one string. It's one string and it bends. And when it bends, it creates a loop. And inside that loop, we think it's a self, but this is really the only thing that's really the self. If you want to call anything the self, and the Hindus do use the word self. I may not use the word self, but some people think the self is all there is. So the real self is just this thing, is the line. And what appears is your fake self, William. That's not the real you, William. The real you is this goddamn piece of string that survives your death. That thing is going to die. William's going to die when the string gets undone. That string is going to come undone. When the string comes undone, he dies, but you got to get to know the goddamn string that's going to stay, because the string stays, William. That's the real you. This doesn't stay. This
Mark, to interrupt, what is the string? What
awareness, just aware space. Aware space. It's this.
Thank you.
Just aware space, capacity, nothing, aware, void, the void.
Okay, Mark, so if the void is all that exists and William's thoughts create the world that William experiences, like, are you saying that because William doesn't exist, that whether William ever had a thought, his experience of the world is predetermined?
No, I don't believe in predetermination. That's our perspective. And that's why you need Nagarjuna's refutations. Just because you may not actually have what we call free will does not mean things are predetermined. But I got to tell you, feel like I've seen like my life's already happened. It's at the end, but but it doesn't mean it's predetermined. I don't think it's predetermined, but in other words, just because you don't have choice does not mean it's predetermined. We live in this binary world where we think it's just because you discover you don't have choice, which a lot of people, I know you talk to a lot of people, William, and a lot of people are telling you we don't have choice, but they're wrong if they say because you don't have choice, everything's predetermined. And maybe, I'm not even saying everything's not predetermined, but if things are predetermined, which I don't believe, that's only a dualistic perspective from our perspective. In reality, time doesn't even exist. And I hate to say that because so many people say that as a cliche. But anyway, I want to, I'm sorry.
Book,
William.
No, go on, Mark. I don't want to be holding the thing up. Go on.
All right, we'll come back to that. Yeah, you're right. We'll come back to that. But I think we got it with the string. I think I did that good, William. That the real thing, you asked a question about the individual. There's the appearance of the individual. So it's not that it's not real, it's just an appearance. What's real is the string. And then the movement of the string makes the individual. There's the triune. Once again, we can't escape the triune. There's what it is, which is the string. What it does is move up and down because of the action. And what its result is, hey, how you doing? I'm good. Oh, fine. Nice. All right. Nice to meet you. You see what I'm saying? Ain't that right, Judy? All right, Judy, what's up? What do you got for me?
So way back at the beginning here, I was asking, where does my everyday sense of self occur in your model of the circle with the void?
Out there. It appears, your sense of self is a subtlety that appears out here. It's just a thought. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So then Sandra Ann said something about one mind. And to me, that's the void. Down there, it's the void. And then I was thinking, well, because the Judy Project shows up in all manner of different ways, depending on where awareness is at that time. You know, how much awareness pops up or arises up or doesn't, you know, that kind of thing. So there's that sense of self can change dramatically from this everyday worried about, you know, did I get the dishes done and what time is dinner and where am I supposed to be at this time? Oh, damn, I missed. And, you know, all that. There's that sense of self. There's another sense of self, which is, and these are the like very common ones to me. There's another sense of self that just drops into meditation and then meditation might be over, but that self continues through the day. Then there's another, now this is where it gets a little hairy. There's another place where I can't even say there's a sense of self. And there are no things, I can't talk in that place because there's no separateness of anything. And I think that place is probably below the line. And I, the Judy Project, never experienced that. So what I was worried about, concerning myself about, was when we have the circle and we have the line and the void is below and manifestation is above, on that line, where does sense of self come in? And now I get you're saying it's above the line. It's also interesting that the way you did the loop-de-loops, that feels like that there's not a line that's the void. It is a movement, and I don't know what causes the movement. There's real stillness, and I refer to it, generally speaking, as an impulse.
Yes.
That awareness impulsively, or has an impulse, or is an impulse that then manifests in some fashion. And what I is aware of it, it's almost like what I arises from Sandra's one mind. And I remember as a little kid being so almost afraid that when I got taken away like that I would not come back to me.
Yes.
That was terrifying.
Yes, me too.
Because as a little kid, I had no concept of what was going on. And there was this I don't know who they were, but they were going to be mad at me for being able to leave. And they might block me from coming back. And so this was my little kid, 5, 6, 7 years old, trying to figure this thing out. And it was pitiful, to say the least. But it's my thing now is I wanted to know, how do I place myself on the void side of the manifestation? It's not a line, it's a dynamic is a good word for it. And to me, what Rod said about relationship, it's the central sense of self, it's relationship to the void and manifestation. That's what develops the I. And some of us were in a meeting earlier on where we were talking about something along these lines. And what I ended up thinking about it was that time is what causes manifestation, because there has to be memory. We start with a wave, and if I don't associate the various parts of the wave, if there's not an I to associate or relate, then there's nothing. I'm done.
That's beautiful. No, thank you. You just said it perfectly. And that dovetails exactly into what Rod was talking about, the relationships. It's our dance. You know what? I guess now that I've heard you add on to what Rod said, the relationship he's talking about is like a dance, and that's what we're watching. We're watching the relationship between the is, the does, and the as, and one guides and moves the other. So that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. But I did draw this picture real quick just to try to go back into what I think Sandra, or I don't know who was talking about, the one mind. So there you go. There would be a good way to picture that. So there's the one mind, and then the one mind has different hallucinations. It's imagining itself as that avatar, as that avatar, as that avatar, but it's just, the void. So from the void springs the multitudes, which, by the way, we'll get into why all this is necessary. Sandra, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the sense of self, I think, arises in response to threat in childhood. It's a defense mechanism.
I've heard that too, like even given our names, going back to the words.
Otherwise, we wouldn't even know we were separate.
Yeah,
I
believe that.
and it's continued because, you know, it's just, it's a mechanism that is pretty fucking popular.
All right. So now, and I don't know how much we're going to get into this. I don't want to go long like I did last time because I don't want anybody to not show up anymore because it's too long. So after 20 minutes, I'm just going to stop and only take questions. So I'm just going to read one last little thing. I'm not going to accomplish everything I wanted, but I feel like what we talked about was better than whatever I had planned. So I like that. But I do want to talk about another aspect about, now going back into relationship. Actually, this dovetails back into what Judy and Sandra were talking about. And Rod, of course, we're going to the relationship. Okay. Yes, exactly. It's fucking relationship. All right, so let me just talk before I get to this for a second. As anybody knows, I'm quite enamored with Dzogchen, and the reason I'm so enamored with it is because it solves this very thing. And Guna, I see your hand up. We're going to get right to you. Matter of fact, before I get into this, why don't you go ahead and ask your question now, Guna, because what I'm going to say is going to take a long time. Guna.
Audio. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Guna. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering what would happen if we had a cynical physicist among us criticizing this. I mean, the idea behind this light and rainbow metaphor, I guess, was to explain how the one becomes the many, right?
Correct. Yes. Or the leaf one too, or the ocean.
Yeah. But I'm focusing on the rainbow now, because strictly speaking, that doesn't do much in the way of explaining. It's more like illustrating.
Yes.
Because.
But can I stop you? Because
I mean, the white light simply isn't one thing.
There you go. I'm glad you said that, because that's why I want to interrupt you. You got a different teaching point. Your teaching point is that too much knowledge could make you miss something that's a simple simile. You're right. If a quantum physicist, if I talk to him, he's like, well, light's not just one. You're absolutely right. But that's more of a lesson to speaking of if you know too much, like the Buddhist thing, like the empty your cup thing. Yeah, you're right. If you know too much, you're going to think you know everything. And so you're going to miss a valid point of somebody could be trying to teach you something that's actually got nothing to do with physics. You need to know nothing to do with light. It's got nothing to do with anything. You're just showing like a child looking at a rainbow and then looking at light and then seeing that the raindrops create that. So I think you have a point, but it's a different teaching point. It's a parallel point.
Yeah. Well, it's just I can see how you want to sort of point to some reality using this metaphor.
Yes.
I'm just taking issue with the word explaining, because explaining in the strict sense of the word, it doesn't. In fact, one might actually argue that it is the white light that is the appearance, whereas the various colors are what the white light consists of, and it appears as white simply because we mix them all together.
And you know what, Guna, going back, I'll bet you what your point is, it's even deeper point that I'm making, but still deeper points don't negate superficial points. They just expand upon them. So you know why? I'm not against, I'm just saying, I'm not against this this white light and color metaphor. I'm just questioning the word explaining. So it's more like a instructional point towards something that cannot really be explained. Would that be a way of putting it? Nah, I like your other point. Your other point was cooler. Let's go back to your other point, which it gets back to what Rod was talking about, the relationship. You just demonstrated to me perfectly that the relationship could be different. It could be that the white light is the illusion. And I want to acknowledge that, because now you're bringing me to a deeper point. Everything could be flip-flop. The aversion could be the opposite. Just like before I was saying, I always thought the secret to the universe was this. And then I just realized, wait a second, the involution, the secret could be this. And then we had a whole conversation about how it's both. So you're
exactly. So the way I understand the white light and the colors is in fact
a deeper way than me. Is a deeper way than me.
No. I'm telling you. I'm just trying to make sense of it myself. Is because it seems to me like the white light is more the implicit form of the colors, So what is implicit in the white light is explicit in the many colors, but they are not fundamentally different in the sense of being one and many at all. So neither are the many really many, nor is the one really one. There's sort of just implicit and explicit forms of the same emptiness, I suppose.
Dude, I know, but I just got to tell you, what you're saying is so many levels beyond what I want to get to. We wouldn't talk about anything else but that if we addressed that. But I want to honor that and to acknowledge that what he's saying is true. I'm sorry.
You still have to find ways to try to explain it. They always wind up being pointers, Gunnar.
Yeah.
Don't they? I mean,
I realize that the implicit or the unmanifest would be more like a oneness insofar as it is not obviously split up into many apparent things, but it seems like more uniform because it's implicit and unmanifest. So in that sense, it's a one, but it's not a single. It's not a singularity in the strict sense.
I get it.
Because the many things must be already implicit in the unmanifest. Otherwise, they couldn't be smeared out by bending, right?
I'm actually going to get to what you're talking about in the next one, probably not today, but what you're talking about is how the result mirrors the qualities of that which created it. It's going to be implicit inside there. And I get that. We're probably not going to go ahead.
Okay, let's postpone that. Okay.
Yeah. No,
I was just going to.
Thank you. What Gunnar's talking about is a beautiful point. It's a beautiful thing. It's just, I want to build things up real slowly. Because, by the way, I don't know if anyone knows this, me and Gunnar have had probably years to talk about this. So, everybody hasn't. So I want to work real slowly, step by step, and you're going to the back of the book. But thank you, Gunnar. That was helpful because what you said was truthful. Is exactly what Rod said. There's relationships and everything. And also what Gunnar said, everything I say is not necessarily true either. You know what I mean? It's true, but it's not true. But we just want to stick with the feelings. What I'm trying to bring everybody to is just simple experience, how you could experience this. And
I didn't want to rock your boat. It's just that I need a clarification for myself there because it doesn't really, there seems like if it's really a one and really a many, that crossover would be impossible to bridge regardless.
I get it.
You wouldn't even be able to bend anything there, right?
No, I get it, dude. I get it. I love it. By the way, dude, you're just talking about really, really deep stuff. And I love it. I love it. But
can I say just one word?
Yes,
or a couple to answer Gunnar?
Thank
But
you.
the crazy thing is that we are many right now. So if you can shift time, then you'll be able to give us humans more information. So you just have to shift time to do that. So anyways, that's what's really hard, right?
Yeah.
Because Gunnar is saying oneness, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, Gunnar, but the thing that I keep coming back to is like, okay, but we're many. You're many within your unit. And so that's the thing. It's like we're making assumptions of where you are in the game.
I love that.
And so
that seems to me like it's really more like an uncertainty principle, which is somewhere between 1 and 0 or something.
Well, yeah, we're in transition. We're in transition. And so if you're in 0, there's 1 on each side. There's a -0 and there's a +0. So you just have to shift your thinking to answer the largest question that you have. I go, do you have free will? I go, yeah. At what scale? You just got to figure out where you are.
Exactly.
And then there's another set of questions to your biggest thought. Going back,
I think I'm getting it. Where everything, the whole reality is somewhere suspended between 0 and 1. It's neither 1 and it's also not 0.
Until you
and
pick.
depending
you
on
pick, though, right?
Exactly.
You gotta pick.
Exactly, and depending on what side of the extremes you are, it appears as 1 or it appears as many, but it's really never either 1 or many.
Right. Well, also understand that if you're enlightened, you understand that there could be 1 and 2. You're in 2 different dimensions, so to speak, And that fucks people up because they're like, wait a minute, the rule set of this one is this, but I know that. And so then it's like you go crazy or you try to figure out. And I think that's what Mark is doing a pretty awesome job is to, if you know what level you are on, if you know you're in transition, if you know, like Sandra is, you know, you're aware of awareness. So then there's another set of rules. And that's what we have to figure out is what are the rules when you know a lot of shit at scale?
So going back to somebody, I think Gunnar and Kirk were just talking about how it's nothing but like a quantum field or quantum flux. And what I try to do is just show you like my shirt that I'm wearing, like that. There's the box right there. It's indeterminacy. Somebody said indeterminacy. So that's it. It's neither, it's both. It's like I said in the first book, it's both and it's neither. It's not this nor that, or it's both. But this is the way I experience that. This is the best thing that I could explain what that's like to experience. All you are is potential. Everything that, and when I bet, by the way, this box that I'm describing, this that I'm showing here, this is the world you're looking at. But like I said, you don't see this because all you see is the world that appears in it. But this is all there is. All there is a field. And we call that field awareness. But that's all there's, and anything that happens in that field, whether it is form or content, whether it be your thoughts, whether it be your feelings, whether it be a person, there's subtle form and there's gross form. And we're so used to only thinking about gross form, people, objects, otherness. But what you start to realize is everything, every nuance of your being, every sense of self, every twinge of a belief, a thought of a thing of choice or self, or everything that happens. If it's happening, it's inside of it. It's not the box itself. And everything that I'm pointing to with the void is pointing to the box itself, not the contents inside the box, the void itself. The void itself is empty. It's completely empty. Nothing could touch it. It's impenetrable. It's space. So when I look at the world, all I see is aware space. Nothing could touch anything. Nothing's graspable. But like I said, it's flooded with colors and shapes. It's flooded with things. But this is where the focus is. All the focus, when people are talking about focusing on the void, it's this, to see what it encompasses all the shit that happened, and anything is happening. Any thought, any feeling, any movement, any content whatsoever is just that. It's just content. Content, form, doesn't matter. Right back to goddamn being the space for it. And that's where it's at. And that's why I call it the suicide mission, because that little simple thing is gonna be the scariest thing you've ever done in your life, because it's gonna feel like suicide. And you're gonna do everything you can. You're gonna think of everything you can to avoid that, because it's your death. That's why I call it the suicide mission. It feels like your death. You're gonna have to, and it's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna feel like burning. When you sit there and you just wanna sit with the space amongst the visions, it's gonna feel like burning. It's gonna feel like suffocating. It's gonna feel like I was just talking to my wife this morning. It's gonna feel like withdrawal. It's gonna feel like withdrawal, like you need to come up, like that flapper needs to come up and point its attention at the thoughts and grab onto the thoughts and start doing shit. It's going to feel like suffocation, but I'm telling you, the reward is worth it. The reward is worth it. And we probably just went off course, but the reward is worth it. So anyway, the reason I wanted to do that was because of quantum flux. Someone's talking about quantum flux. Things appear. It's just anything could appear inside there. All these thoughts, philosophies, quantum, anything is just form. And to just look at it as form is to draw your attention back to what really matters and not get sucked in by anything. And here's what I was telling my wife this morning. Your wife, your brain, your mind knows you more than anything. That's why all this is so hard. Like my wife's issues, the thing that it won't let go of, that's her mind. So your mind is not going to let you let go of this shit. It's going to keep you holding on to it. It's going to keep you focused on what's on the inside, focused on the content, instead of drawing your attention down here. But here's the thing is it knows you. This is your mind. So all these things that you're getting up to in your brain that you think are important, they're not. And this is another thing I was talking with other people is like my wife this morning. She was having a son. I was like, look, you can't, you want to take care of everything before you surrender. And that's not the way surrendering works. You want to fix everything first and then surrendering. Surrendering means leaving it all on the table, unresolved, unfixed, unthought of, unfixed, and leave it there and then surrender. I know what we do with our minds. I've watched my mind forever. I know what we do. We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to make ourselves better. We're trying to scheme to make everything better. That is the thing that's keeping you away from that. And your mind knows you. It knows all your tricks. Now it's getting down to real subtle stuff and real stuff. But all it is just a trick to keep your mind up here, because your mind knows you. So whatever your little thing is, whatever is most important to you, like with me was the triune. I was obsessed with that. That was my impediment. I just obsessed with it. But everyone's got their own particular thing. But the target, the reward, the destination is that, just to drop everything. So I know what's going on. Your minds are trying to solve everything, but just drop it and you're already there, because you're already that fucking thing. You don't have to create this. That is your reality.
That's the point of forming a relationship with it. Form a relationship with the void.
I love it. I love it.
That's kind of,
yeah.
The void formed a relationship with itself. Okay. So that original tension that we are is just, created in its image. The one mind is doing all the thinking, and it's just telling you to go, hey, look, get rid of, I created you just like me. You're having thoughts just like me, if we're personifying it. Excuse me for personifying it. But you remove your thoughts in order to have the thoughts. Because it had a desire to do this.
Yeah.
And what it did was create you having all these other desires, and the Buddha and others say, get rid of your desires so that you can go back to this one's desires. And in order to do that, you form a relationship with it. And as you do, you're going to surrender your desires for its desires. Does that make sense? It's all language, and it's not exactly it, but it's the best I can make it sound sensible.
No. That sounded, what you just said is actually a Zen classic. In Zen, they call it being the host for the host.
Yes.
That's the relationship. So your relationship now is hosting the host. And the way you host the host is getting the fuck out of the way.
Is getting the fuck out of the way.
Is getting the fuck. And so this is something, anyone I've been talking to recently, what I've been obsessed with, as far as a teaching point, is to, as I've already demonstrated, we can't control the arising. The arising are always going to be there. Your thoughts, feelings, anger, everything you don't want is always going to be there. But we have two choices. This is our choice. If somebody wanted to talk about no choice, now I'm going to talk about choice as if we have choice. You have a choice to either not rise to the arising and keep your attention where it is, or you could allow your attention to rise to meet the arising, and it's going to inflate it and make it a stick man and make it real. And now that thought is going to become the center, and it's going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you grow such a distaste for it. You're like, oh, that's right. Get back to drop that thought. And all the difference is why the fuck wait so long until you get back to where you're going to be anyway. And the thing is why? Well, I was telling my wife, because you feel justified being up here. That's why. That's the trick, at least for her. That's the thing, is you always feel justified in being up here. I need to. I have to secure it. I have to fix it. This is important. I have to do it. You always feel justified. And at some point, it's going to be more important to just let it all fucking hang. Don't try to resolve it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to outthink it. You're moving. The whole problem is moving. Enlightenment is down here, is not moving. So you're coming out to move it, thinking you're fixing the problem, but now you move. Now you just created more ripples. You just created more waves. So, the relationship. Wait, fuck. What did you just say, Rod? You said something that made me talk about this. Did I wake you up, Rod?
No, I was answering someone in the chat. What I was just saying is you get out of the way, the host for the host.
Oh, that's it. I'm sorry. Thank you, Rod. I needed you to help me. That's what getting out of the way looks like. I'm sorry. Thank you, Rod. I needed that. That's what getting out of the way looks like. And that's the calorie thing. That's what I was trying to tell my wife. This thing is the easiest thing in the world. That's the whole fucking joke of it. It is the easiest thing in the world because all it is this. But the analogy that I like to draw back to calories is anyone that's ever had to lose weight before will tell you that the easiest thing in the world is the hardest thing in the world. So why should we be surprised that it's a paradox? But it's true. It's the easiest. Like I said, just imagine if all you had to do was get enlightened, was you just had to pick up this 10 a million times. And you're like, okay, but that is impossibly boring. It is so boring, it's impossible. Okay, but I'm just telling you, it is that simple.
Simple is simple, but it's not easy. And that's almost in everything.
It's hardest thing. And you know why something me and Susan talked
Occam's
about?
razor is a pain in the ass.
I love Occam's razors. Yeah.
But it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you a question. So we'll just finish now and we'll just do questions and answers. Because if William's still here, go back to Occam's razors, because William's been talking to me. Last time we were talking about the self and what is the self, and he's got a problem with that I wanted to address. And I came down to Occam's razor. And tell me, are you still there, William?
Yeah, I'm still here, Mark. Yeah.
I want you to listen to this, because this is the email that I told you I'd get to, but I said it would be easier to talk about it than explain it. Getting down to what Rod just talked about, Occam's razor. Are you familiar with what Occam's razor is, William?
I am, yeah. The simple answer is usually the correct one.
Exactly. And you probably know it more than I do. That's all I know of it. All right. So I was thinking about your question, and I went through all kinds of schematics. And then all of a sudden I was thinking about a conversation that Sam Harris had. And Sam Harris is kind of a bridge between the hardcore scientists and our stuff. Oh, fuck. Oh, man, I just lost everything. Oh, okay, here it is. Occam's razor. All right, so here's what we got. We have the world presented for us. That's the only thing we know. We find ourselves with the world presented for us. That is the reality. So what I call that, William, is appearances. So the world that we have before us is appearances. From the appearances, we try to deduce where we came from. So from appearances, we see that we have bodies, and we see have all these things. And what I don't understand is that the scientists acknowledge this. That's why I said earlier, you talk to any scientist, any 8th grade scientist, they're going to tell you that the world that we're looking at is our imagination. That everything we're looking at is just a concocted imagination that was created from our eyes and our brains in a real world. So they admit, and we admit, that all we're looking at is imagination. No one disagrees on that. The only difference is they make the assumption that there is a real world in addition to imagination that's creating this. But the real world that they have evidence of, it's a product of the imagination. Because the only thing that we know is the imagination. Everything happens in the imagination, and they just have to take a step of faith, a leap of faith, which is why I'm talking about Occam's razor. And tell me, Rod and William, if I'm out of step here, that aren't they not doing Occam's razor when they're creating a whole new fictitious world that's necessary for this world? Because all we really know is that we have imagination. So you're saying, oh, but we see brains and all that. All the brains that you see and all the stuff that you see is in your imagination, which you admit. So to me, it seems like Occam's razor that they have to make up an additional world in a sense of self to where we don't have to. There's just awareness, perpetuating the awareness. So am I understanding the essence of Occam's razor? And is there anything wrong with my line of thinking, William?
Well, my interpretation or definition of Occam's razor is that the simplest answer is usually the correct answer. And if you were to apply Occam's razor to the self or to this reality, of course, everything is energy and nothing is literally real. Because if you look at close enough at anything, you're going to find atoms and then subatoms and God knows what if you kept digging. But relatively speaking, this reality is, knock on wood, real. And it's our, I compare it to a very elaborate high-tech computer game.
Hold on a second. And, William, I just want to interject. Wait, William, when you said, because I want you to continue, but I want us to be on the same page as you continue. So when you talk about the real world, are you still talking about the real world that we all experience, which is our imagination? Or are you talking about a theoretical world that physicists and scientists concoct? When you say real world, are you talking about?
No, I'm actually talking about both, because what I term as the relative real world is the world that our 5, maybe 6, maybe more senses perceive, whereas what the physicists call the real world is basically just energy building atoms, building cells, building everything that's ever been built. but relatively speaking, the world, the self, and the experience is real. And as such, I find it illogical and paradoxical and irrational to imagine, from my perspective, and I have had no awakening experience or anything, but just from a logical perspective, the theory or the belief that we as souls, and not from a religious standpoint, but from actual source energy, from that energy field that is coming into this illusionary but relatively real physical reality, that entity that we see as the self or the I, not what the mind, not the thinking mind, but the actual awareness itself, is actually an entity that's here experiencing this like we would a very high-tech computer game. And that, this reality is experientially real to us as an individual playing a high-tech computer game, but the self is actually the player of the game, but the self still exists as an entity.
Absolutely. And you know what? I like that, William. And like I said, it could just be the words that I use, because if you listen to Ramana Maharshi or Advaita people, they'll tell you the opposite of what I say. They say only the self exists. The mind's illusory and the only thing that exists is self. So I get that. And I think what you're saying was kind of consistent with what I was saying about there's the one self, the one real thing, but it shapes itself to make it appear as individuals. But it is still just that one thing. Like, what do you think about the analogy of the ocean and the wave? Does that help you see the relationship between how awareness could be?
Yes, I could see the ocean and the wave analogy in the sense that the self is a wave and that it's a part of the ocean, but in this relative reality, that wave is as real as a wave on the ocean.
Bingo.
And it's still experiencing. But just one other point, and I don't want to hog this whole thing, but in your book, you alluded to something that intrigues me and that I actually believe, however correctly or incorrectly the theory is, when you said that your focus on mystery actually created an experience of mystery for you, and you decided in the end to give up desiring. And I thought, well, it's impossible to give up desiring, because whether you prefer coffee over tea or blue over beige, they're desires.
Yes,
but
thank you.
What you can work on is perhaps giving up attachment to outcome. But giving up desires, I think the only way, and it mightn't even be a way, but the only potential way to give up a desire is to not exist.
No, actually, what you just said, William, is actually the highest realization. That's it. It's a fairy tale to believe the opposite. What you're talking about is actually the highest teaching. To recognize you're going to have preferences, but you have no preference for those preferences are realized. What you're talking about is a higher teaching. So I appreciate that. You're absolutely right.
But when you say, Mark, that's a higher teaching, that's actually the foundation of, I was going to say virtually, but I will say literally every religion on this planet.
Good.
To have faith and trust God.
Dude, I know nothing about Christianity, but I'm finding myself quoting Christianity.
Neither do I.
I know nothing about it, but I find myself saying, oh, this is what they must mean by separating the wheat from the chaff. Or, oh, this is what they must mean by that. So I believe all religions are 100% on, but time, look at your shoes, look at your jeans, look at your socks.
Oh yeah, it's corrupted by human.
Yeah, exactly.
Human beliefs.
So no, I like religion. I'm a huge fan.
I get out of the way.
Can we button up one thing you were talking about, Mark?
Thank you, Rod.
About Occam's razor.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so when forgive me, everybody, if I'm backing up too far, but you said something. The scientists create. There must be another world that it's coming from, and they create it out of their. What happens is anytime you drill back far enough, the scientists have to get into imagination because it starts getting mystical. The Big Bang is a mystical occurrence.
Theoretical physics.
Yeah. So every time you start drilling backwards, looking for what's behind the curtain, so to speak, everybody gets mystical. You bump into a mystical thing because the cause is always outside of the effect. And you can look at us as an effect in a way, and we can't see the cause because we're the effect. But the way we can see it, there is a way to see it, is because you are a fractal that's causing other things, and you can kind of go in that direction.
Yes,
exactly. But every time scientists, everybody backs up, you hit this barrier of explaining it because it's outside. Yeah. You know,
exactly.
The void is below the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's below the line in your model. So that's what I wanted to bring it back. So Occam's razor works because it's sort of like
it's backing up.
Get there.
You're backing up.
You're backing up and you reach the boundary.
Wow,
and so the simplest explanation is there's a void back there.
Yeah.
And that's about as good as it gets.
And that's why last conversation me and Rod had differently was we were talking about the simplest thing is nothing. We were talking about the Buddha's famous for that, where he just said nothing, or he held up a flower. And then I was going through it in my mind saying that the next simplest thing would be one word. And then for me, that would be this. And then if you wanted to get more nuanced into it, a little bit more subtle, then you rise up to, so let's say, aware space, or what Dzogchen says, clarity and emptiness. Now we're saying something more about this, and we're something more about than just nothing. So you go from zero to saying nothing, which is the truth, the unspeakable, which is this. And then you go to breaking your silence and just saying this. It's the simplest you could say is one word, this. 2 words, you would use aware space, because now you're getting a little bit more nuance into seeing that that all there is aware, space and the capacity, the inseparability of space and lucidity. And then the third one for me is, like I said, is, does, and as. And then the fourth one, Kirk will have to tell us that later at a different time. He's the expert on the 4. But anyway, Boris, you got your hand up, buddy. What's up? Oh, did I let you finish, Rod, before that? Or do we? Cool. Okay. How you doing, Boris? And thanks for coming, Boris. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Glad to see you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
All right, good. Thanks, Mark. I just want to point out maybe a point of differentiation or detail that, when you bring up concepts like desire or preferences, those have kind of particular meanings, or there's a delineation between those terms. And I think it's helpful to drill down a little bit on what we're meaning when we say those things. So, for example, in the Buddhist 10 fetter model, desire and ill will, or sometimes it's called craving and aversion, are seen as fetters, as products of individuated self, because they are, you might say, they're preferences, either in the positive or negative, that belong to a somebody, a self. So that's a fetter that can and has been shown and experienced by many to have fallen away, whereas some preference can still remain, but the preference doesn't belong to any entity, and there's no identification with it. And it's just like, the Buddha holding up the flower, or a preference, or the moon, or this thing we call life, are just indistinguishable, thisness, or whatever you want to call it.
I'm curious, is there any more because the distinguishment that I first come up with is an attachment to outcome. Is there a further distinguishment between preferences and desire than attachment to outcome? Because preferences would be no attachment to outcome, just a preference. In desire, I'm seeing, in my mind, I'm feeling as a desire, attachment to outcome. Is there more to it? I'm curious if there's more subtleties that I'm not picking up on also.
Yeah, that's the question. Does desire and preference, is there a difference between the definition of both those words, seeing as we're using words? To me, preference is a desire, and desire is a preference.
But I'm wondering is because there's tons of religions, tons of countries, So maybe like Alaskans have a million words for snow. So I'm wondering a point that Boris is bringing up is if we did want to distinguish for the point of being more nuanced, if we did want to make distinguishments, create distinguishments for the point of, clarification, is because the distinguishment that I could experience is sometimes there's preferences with no outcome. Like you want to go into a restaurant, I prefer the chocolate. We don't got chocolate. All right, I don't care. Now we got vanilla. And then desire, Go ahead, Boris.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up is because, it can, if experience is seen as having relevance to a self or belonging to a self, then I would say that, desire and preference could be, conflated, because it's like, well, a desire manifests, let's say, as a preference seemingly. Now, I would say that when there isn't any centralization to that preference, that it no longer belongs to anything, it arises just like a cloud is passing.
I get it. Right? I get it.
And so the outcome-based thing is really a time-based projection expectation thing, which also requires a self in order to picture itself having access to something in the future. So when the sense of time and the essentialism of time and space falls away, those things don't have anything to stand on. So they too can fall away.
And tell me if this speaks to it, Boris. Like I was having a discussion with someone, like let's say politically, I have left leanings politically, but I don't believe them. I can't help that I have them. My conditioning is such that I'm more attracted to left-leaning politics, but I do not believe that it is the superior politic to right politics. I just believe it's my conditioning, and I can't help but to be more attracted and see more value in the left, even though, and what I say by that is, let's say, look at evolution. The way I think politics work is just like evolution. We have a left and a right. And the way evolution works is, let's say the left would be the hunters in evolutionary theory. So they would be taking risks, liberals, progressives, whatever word you want to look at. They're taking risk. They would be the hunters. So their way of helping out the colony is to go out, to leave the colony, to take a risk, to get a hunt. Maybe they get something good. Maybe they get nothing, but you're taking a risk. Whereas the farmers, which would be the right or the conservative approach, is say, nope, our approach is to tend the farm and definitely get some crops. And I think that nature works in the leapfrog effect, where we have the conservative as the left, as the right foot, holding our basis down for security. And then what's the other thing? Freedom. And then the progressive instinct is to go out and to reach out further. And then that plants its foot down, and that becomes the base. And then the right foot. So I just see nature is always going between left and right, left and right. So even though I could acknowledge that I have a preference for left, I can't.
Mark, can I be pedantic, and can I just ask a question for clarification? You say that your leaning in politics is left-leaning.
Yes.
Would your desire be for a reality that's more politically left-leaning?
Nope, just the opposite. Just the opposite. I like it exactly the way it is. Exactly the way. That's
so
my
your
point.
Your desire is to have it the opposite to left.
My desire is just to have it the way it is, but I acknowledge my left impulses that appear in the goddamn box. That's what I'm saying. I can't help. And this is what I mean, going back to Boris. I can't help what preferences happen there, but I could care less. I know what I like, but I don't care what happens. I trust it. It's like watching a movie and you hope this happens, but something else happens. You're not giving up on the movie. You're like, all right, well, I'm sure it'll work out. You know what I mean? We know.
So you're not actually giving up your desires. You're giving up your attachment to your outcome.
Thank you, William. That's exactly it. And I'm acknowledging desires because I want people to and maybe I'm using the wrong word. And that's what maybe Boris was trying to point out. Maybe I don't have desires. Maybe what I have is preferences. And I like to be dramatic with my words and, say I'm violent and I'm desirous and all these things just for teaching purposes. And I think that Boris was trying to subtly teach me that there is a difference between desire and preferences. So I think we covered that. Let's go. Unless you have something to finish, Boris, because you got your hand up. If you got something to add to that. All right.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Boris, and thank you, William. So go ahead, Debbie. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to your discussion of what drives the next experience. Because
Yes.
we've been sort of across the board. We've said your current thought leads to that, to the next thought, or your predetermination might have some shape. Yeah, can you dive a little bit into what drives that next thought and the next experience? Is it personal or is it random?
It's a good one. But first I want to say the thing about the predetermination, because I just got a thought. Definitely I don't believe in predetermination, but I have had an experience where I saw that the end already happened. But that does not mean it's predetermined. That's just our perspective. It doesn't think about what determined means. Just think about the implications of predetermined. You know what I mean?
It's a probability, Mark. You probably just saw a probability. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. It's a
exactly. Thank you. That's exactly it. And also time stretched out. Like the experience was, this has already happened. I don't know, just time. There is a level of time where you have where you just feel like this is already, where there's unity, where the end has already happened. The alpha and the omega are here, but it's irrelevant. I don't want, but that does not mean predetermination. So I definitely have never, I don't know though. I mean, let's think about that. There are experiences if people, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't think any of that's worth thinking about. It just goes back to the mystery, but we do have to account for weird experiences, like where people have had past lives, where people have, we all of us have had weird experiences where like, how the fuck, like synchronicity. So I don't know. I don't like to think about predetermination. To me, it's a mystery. Whatever word we're going to have on it, we can't pin it down. Is why to me, it's not worth it. It's not this or that. It's not slippery. It's not predetermination, and it's not, go ahead, Sandra. You just want to interject for one quick sentence?
But you said you saw the end already happened. What did you mean by that?
I don't remember. None of it. Just it was an experience I had where all of a sudden I came back and I just wrote down nothing matters. And I looked at it thinking I wrote down something profound. And the only reason I wrote down nothing matters is because the end already happened. It was just all I experienced was a dissolution of time. I just had an experience where I was outside of time, and you see that this is in time. So when I say that it already happened, I don't have a premonition. I've never had any premonitions about anything. But go ahead.
Okay, because I think I saw the end already happen too.
We'll come back to that, but I don't want to interrupt Debbie. Thank you. Go ahead, Debbie.
No, that's what I was just getting to. What's driving the next experience?
Okay, there we go. So forget predetermination. I'm not into any of that. None of that's, you shouldn't be thinking about choice or predetermination. I'm telling you, all that is, it's your mind to just get you up thinking about it here, and you're not going to solve it. I mean, I'd take that back, whatever you're into, you're into.
I think it's probability.
Yes, exactly. It's potential. It could be, it may be.
It's cause and effect.
Yep,
it's cause
exactly.
and effect. And there's going to be a probable thing take place, but built into the software of this particular simulation is also random probability.
Yes. And that's
so
what
we have probability. This is Tom Campbell's work. If anybody is familiar with Tom Campbell, this is his whole thing.
Go ahead.
It's like it's cause and effect, and there's a probability that's going to arise, but out here on the exterior are random probabilities that kind of change and weave things, and it's just built in. It is it's part of the process. It's part of the as. It's part of the, does and as. An appearance. Part of the appearance. It's just, that's how it goes. But most of the time it's probable. And then boom, every once in a while you get.
What do you think? Hey, do me a favor, Rod, answer her question. Because I don't ever think about this. She says random or predetermined, which we don't like predetermined.
She says what, Debbie, let me still man this. Did you say what causes the next experience? What determines the cause and effect? Probability does. But written into the sine wave, you're most likely going to get this, but every once in a while there's a random thing built into the system. What I'm saying and the wave goes like this instead of it goes along like this, and then every once in a while you hit a speed bump and it starts doing this, or it starts doing this.
Let me bring it down to a less technical way.
Makes sense.
This is the way what Rod just said is what's going on underneath. The way I was trying to explain it to my wife yesterday was, right now, Debbie, you're creating your future. All we have is the base, the path, and the fruit. So right now, your moment is the fruit. This is the fruit of that. That is the fruit of the inseparability of your past, base, and path. The inseparable, when I mean by the base and the path, we're talking about your insight, your experiences, your wants, your things that are pushing you, your thoughts. So all your thoughts of yesterday pushed you into the fruit of today. Now, today with your mind, you're creating tomorrow. With all of your thoughts, where you're investing your time, where you're investing your attention, you're creating your tomorrow, the potential of tomorrow. So the seeds of tomorrow are today, and you're cultivating those seeds with your actions, with your attention. So you're taking your actions of today, or another way to say is, if you want to see your future, look what's in your hands, or look what's in your mind. You're creating it. So in your mind, if you, whatever you're doing, you're creating the seeds for the future. And now tomorrow you live that reality. And then while you're living and reacting that reality, you're also now creating the next wave. And that momentum will create the next wave. And that's all that's that's the only difference between anybody or experiences is our, what we're doing with our minds, where we're placing our attention on our minds. Whatever you're placing your attention on, that's going to grow. You're going to wake up. Isn't that your experience, Debbie? Don't you find up waking up thinking about the thing you're obsessed with the day before? Right? Yeah. Isn't that the way it works up? I know. That's why I always ask people, what's on your mind? What's on your mind? That's what your day, that's what your life is. That's your experience. For me, what's on my mind is this shit. I love models and Dharmakaya, listening to the Dharmakaya. That's what's on my mind. So whatever's in your mind.
Mark, can I interject just one last time?
Please,
because
yes.
I'm like that. I'm just focusing on the contradiction between the acceptance that future experiences and manifestation are random, and the contradiction in that, in what you're saying and what you've said in your book, that what you're actually thinking of is going to create your future creation and manifestation.
It sounds like you just...
Because in your book, you said your focus or attention on mystery brought mystery into your experience.
Yes, exactly.
So it was your thinking in the present that actually brought your future into existence.
Yes.
Yeah, but suppose an odd thing comes up, an illness pops up that maybe, suppose there are some karmic propensities here.
There will be.
Mm-hmm.
Count on it.
That's part of the cause and effect.
Yeah, you can count on it. No, when you want this,
so your mind isn't, you're not putting your attention on it. It comes out of nowhere, and it could be a karmic thing from.
It will. And to be honest with you, the more you dig deep into this, the more you cultivate this aspect as opposed to the rising aspect, you will be courting pain and misery and discomfort in your life. You will be. If you've read,
perhaps karma is nothing more than thought, and that if belief in karma actually creates and manifests that belief.
Yeah, because karma
doesn't really exist.
Well, all karma, you're right. Both things you said. All karma is action, and the action for the mind is thoughts. All there is the mind and awareness. The action of the mind is thoughts. All karma is action, literally.
So the mind is all.
The mind is all, literally. But the mind has three dynamics, though. It's all, but it's not just nothing. It is what it is, which is the all. It's what it does and what it appears as. And you're looking at what it appears as.
At the end of the day, those old spiritual masters all say the same thing. Karma is cause and effect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When they boil it down.
By the action.
And you can get scared of karma, right? But at the way they do is take the judgment out of it and just say it's cause and effect.
Yeah,
it's only karma, and we can't know how far back the causes are.
What if the cause of karma is nothing more than present day thought, present moment thought, not alone present day? What if that is the cause?
Obviously, that's possible. That's possible.
But like in individuals' experience, if one was to ask themselves, like Mark alluded to in his book, that is focused on mystery, manifested mystery, and we're all aware of, the manifestation of one's worst nightmares or the manifestation of one's dreams, does it not at least imply that one's thought actually is, as crazy as it sounds, creating one's future experience and one's future world manifestation?
I think so. Absolutely. I don't know the specifics, the mechanics and everything, But I could tell you the epiphany that you're talking about in my book was just about, I took refuge in the mystery. Like up until that point, I took refuge in the world. I looked to the world for comfort. I looked to the world in security. If I get a wife, if I get a family, if I get an education, if I get money, I was to arrange my life to bring about happiness. And it didn't work. None of it worked. None of it worked. Frustration, just more frustration. And then you get in. But anyway, the point that you're getting to was when I just realized the futility of trying to arrange form to get happiness. So I took refuge in mystery. So now we're going into a different subject. Now we're not talking about worrying about what our future is going to be or worrying about our tomorrow karma. It's just pure surrendering. At that point, we get back to what really the thing is about. It's just giving it all before you have to think about it. Don't try to control it. Don't try to go into surrendering with a parachute and a pillow and a nice hat and a thing like that. Surrendering is just dropping it as it is, because there's always going to be more. There's always going to be, because your mind knows you. Your mind knows you, and it's going to give you your fears. And your fears are going to seem real because it's you. It's your experience. They're real. So I know what it's like to take it, but there's just going to have to come a certain point where you trust more in the emptiness than you trust more in the world. You're just going to like drop it. The mind has nothing to offer me. These thoughts have nothing to offer me. It just, all it wants to do is keep you up here, rising to the rising. It doesn't give a fuck what you're thinking about. It knows you, and it knows if we bring up this topic, you're going to get stuck up here trying to solve that problem. Just drop it, and you're going to get just more used to it. It's as simple as that. It's taking the momentum in a different direction. All of our momentum is going in this direction of building, constructing, protecting. And that's why I'm saying if you go the other way, it's going to feel, going back to what Debbie said, if you do, just tell it, if it was a warning to anybody, once you get into this, your life is going to be miserable. Your life's going to be horrible. You know why? This is what I just said to my wife. Because at first, we're looking at the ocean as waves. Remember the first analogy where it's just a bunch of waves? And once you take care of the waves, you got a flat ocean, right? Wrong. Enlightenment is just the beginning. Once you take care of the waves, there's just a flat ocean. Now you're just noticing more subtle things. Now it's just a more subtle game. It's the whole thing over again, just on a much more subtle thing. And that's why I'm saying you're noticing everything's in front of you. The identification's in front of you, thinking's in front of you. Whatever happens, it's happening in here. Any movement, any tension, anything, any subtle form of sense of self or anything, it's content. It's just a movement. It's a subtle ripple. And that just drives you back to being more aware of the encompassment itself. The more you notice those subtle little things, you're going to notice this. But anyway, to get back to your point, that's what's going on with my wife, because she's taken her spiritual life very seriously. And now all the shit's coming out, all your unconsciousness, all these things that you've been bottled, that you didn't want to face, because we think that enlightenment is just about being happy. No, I just said this to somebody else. It's a fairy tale. People think the imaginary thing is, it's a selfish child thing of thinking enlightenment is going to just be eating lollipops and getting pleasurable, where people are massaging you and making you pleasure all day. So I say, what would be honestly more reasonable? What would actually be more reasonable? Having that as your enlightenment, as your nirvana, where you're just getting pleasured and tickled and everything's wonderful, or to be rewired from within so you can go into any situation, any conditions, and you don't care. Suffering, not suffering, happy, tall. You make no distinguishment between nothing. That is the real thing. Other people are settling for something cheap and weird, just a cheap thrill. It's nothing that the earth doesn't offer you anyway. Just spend a day in Disney World, spend a day on a jet ski. That seems no more much of a difference than this superficial fantasy that people have of just being happy. I don't know how we got on that. What are we talking about? Where are we at? Somebody land this thing. But hey, we're basically done. So now we're done. So if anybody wants to hang up and go, I don't want these things to be too long because I want you guys to come back again. So I don't want it to seem like an arduous thing. So anybody that wants to drop out now, go ahead and drop out. And I'll hopefully see you in 2 weeks. But if anybody wants any questions or to get into anything, I'll be here for that. But we're at the 2-hour mark. Yeah.
Thank you. Great session. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate you coming. I hope to see you again. Thank you, Debbie.
You will. I'll be back.
And thank you for helping. Everybody that's asking questions, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Guna, you're on.
Oh, I just want to make sure that I just want to make sure to remark that both the hunters as well as the farmers are both conservatives. So
elaborate.
You want, well, for one thing, the hunters are older than the farmers. Farmers are progressives really, compared to the hunters.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I understand what you wanted to say. I'm just, you know, not saying.
I know you like to do that.
But I don't know where you would put the progressives among hunters and farmers. Probably among those who say, let's eat next year's harvest. And
so what I'm talking about, when I say left and right or that, I'm really drawing down the basic dynamic of security versus freedom. That the human tension that we
but
all
even that I see just the other way around, because usually people who call themselves left, maybe not you specifically, maybe you have a very personal understanding of the left, but the left are usually people who want others to take the risk for them. So
that's good. That's good. No, it's true. Right. Absolutely. And you know what? That's also an indication of, Gunnar, is what you said before. Whatever you could say about one, it's the other. It's inverse, because that's what I've noticed, even watching politics now, that I've lived long enough. I'm 51 years old. I have lived long enough to watch all the politicians switch their side. I've seen the left take the right issues, right take the left. They've all switched sides within my lifetime.
Yeah. And also, since we're on that point, I would suggest that we first allow you to fully come out with what you want to present as your own message or view on things, and then later ask about how it relates to other concepts such as karma and reincarnation. All of these are very interesting subjects, but the way it's been done now sounds as if people already assume that you're teaching these concepts like karma and reincarnation, which hasn't been clarified yet. So I would suggest that we allow you to go through a full presentation of how you view things, and then much later, and not to assume as if you're already claiming these things, right? Putting it into your mouth. Maybe you're not believing in karma or in reincarnation. Maybe you do. I don't know. But maybe
you know what it is. I know what you're saying, Gunnar. I didn't pick up on your point. The thing is me, the way I live, I got no problems with whatever. You want to talk about God, boom, I'm with you. Now I'm adjusting my words for God. You want to talk about karma, boom, because I'm always looking behind people's words. I don't care about karma or God. I'm trying to look at what is the energy between what they say. So, I mean, you're right. Karma to me is it's just action. It's just, none of these things. Most of the stuff that we talked about tonight, that we got sidetracked on, everything that, if you notice, but I always really want to bring it back to, it's just this. This is the real fun. This is the real thing. But we have to tease it apart. The way people have to see that is by bringing up these concepts of the base path and the fruit in the relationship, like what Rod was talking about. There's very subtle. So I think, to answer your question, I think I am doing that, or my plan was to do that. But one thing I think you're not taking into consideration is most of these people, I assume, never read my book. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But anybody else? Any questions? Any concerns? Any thing that we talked about was interesting or not? Nope. All right, guys. Well, let's end it here, because, like I said, I don't want this to be a thing that weighs on your mind like it's a big deal. So let's end it here on a good note. And 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, you guys show up, and we're going to continue on that. And this triune, I only got like this deep into the book. So this is probably going to be, I imagine, maybe 4 or 5 presentations, but it's worth it. And I hope you guys think it's worth it, because it is deep and it is rewarding, because there's nothing more rewarding than seeing that this is it. This is it. So love you guys. Thank you. I'm going to end it now so I don't have to edit it, and we can end on a cool goodbye, and then we'll see you in 2 weeks. All right. Bye-bye.